Welcome to Georgia. Georgia is a small country on the shore of the Black Sea. Nowadays, the country is known for its great wines and relatively high freedom of economy. The World Bank even announced it as the world's #1 economic reformer in 2007. The country is a former region of the Soviet Union, but gained its independence in 1991 when the Soviet Union collapsed. As Russia's neighbor, Georgia is always threatened by a warmongering state. However, still, this small country with a population of only 3.7 million inhabitants has been able to reach relatively good prosperity in only a couple of decades. What has been the secret sauce for Georgia's success? Georgia's economy has historically been centered on Black Sea tourism, producing wines, metals, machinery, chemicals and textiles, as well as cultivating citrus fruits, grapes and tea leaves. During the Soviet Union, the country was extremely poor and the production was mainly agricultural. After declaring independence in the early 90s, Georgia suffered a quick downturn in its economy, as trade with other Soviet republics stopped almost overnight. Industrial production was forced to stop. A similar pattern in economic activity was also seen in other Soviet republics when the main trading partner was dissolved. The early 90s were turbulent for the people of Georgia in many ways, which did not mean a good outlook for the country's economy. Georgia went into civil war from 1991 to 1992, and conflicts arose around the country. After initial conflicts cooled down, the country began reconstructing civilization and the economy. Coming to the late 1990s, the economy of Georgia had begun privatization. More than 10,500 small enterprises had been privatized from the former communism-based national ownership model. Also, more than 1,200 larger corporations had been formed into a private ownership model. Georgia was ready to launch big economic reforms and let its prosperity rise. The early 2000s meant the time of governmental and economic reforms for Georgians. To understand how the country was able to push reforms, we need to look at who was leading the country. During the words of the millennium, the country was ruled by President Eduard Shevardnadze. Georgians did not agree with the rulings of the president, and international election councils suspected election trickery during the presidential election of 2003. People went on the barricades, and the so-called Rose Revolution threw Shevardnadze out of office in November 2003. Luckily, the Rose Revolution remained peaceful, and the president resigned peacefully without violent conflicts. After the revolution in January 2004, new presidential elections were held and Mikhail Saakashvili was elected to become the president of Georgia with 96% of all votes. At the time, he was only 36 years old and became the youngest president in Europe. President Saakashvili was looking toward the West and wanted his country's economy to prosper. In 2004, Georgia undertook several profound institutional reforms to modernize the economy and improve the business climate. The new administration's goal was to fight against robust corruption, deregulate business sectors, and simplify the tax structure. With these reforms, the country aimed to attract foreign investment and encourage Georgians to launch business ventures. Since Saakashvili took office, Georgia has been nominated as the least corrupt country of the former Soviet Union. The country also has one of the most liberal tax jurisdictions in European countries. Reforms applied during the Saakashvili's administrations worked really well for Georgia. The country has received high ratings in the World Bank's Ease of Doing Business Index, and the gross domestic product is now 10 times higher than in 2000. Development in Georgia has been positive, but we must remember that compared to European Union countries, Georgia still has a long way to go. Georgia's geography as a neighbor to Russia makes it hard for the country to develop closer to Western standards of living. Russia does not want to let Georgia prosper. The most recent escalation in the tense relationship between Russia and Georgia was in 2008. In August 2008, the war began between Russian and Georgian troops over the South Ossetian area. Russia claims to have legal ownership of South Ossetian regions that are recognized by Western states as the official part of Georgia. Luckily, hot conflict did not last for long, and by the 12th of August in 2008, the ceasefire took place. President of France, Nicolas Sarkozy, had a crucial role in the peace negotiation process. However, the peace negotiated was controversial, and ownership of the South Ossetian area remains unclear. Among international investors, war in Georgia increased the country's risks, and foreign direct investments took a severe downturn in 2008. Also, the global financial crisis of 2008 did its share in the decrease of foreign investments toward Georgia. Since 2008, foreign direct investments in Georgia have increased with a record year in 2017 with a total of $1.9 billion in foreign investments. In 2022, Georgia is recognized as an upper middle income economy. The GDP per capita is approximately $15,400, which is an all-time high for Georgia, but still far from the European Union's average of $38,000. Georgia's economy relies on agriculture and industrial production. The main exports are copper and, maybe a bit surprising, cars. The country has its own currency called the lari, controlled by the Central Bank of Georgia. Own currency helps to keep Georgian products competitive on the global market, as the central bank can devaluate the currency. The largest trading partners for Georgia were China, neighboring Azerbaijan, and Russia in 2020. In 2022, when Russia began a war against Ukraine, hundreds of thousands of people fled from Russia to neighboring countries. As a Russian neighbor, Georgia took, according to an official source, close to 100,000 people from Russia. These people can become a valuable asset for the Georgian economy, as the country has suffered a declining population since the early 1990s. The development of the Georgian economy has been positive since President Saakashvili changed the country's direction. Challenges for the country arise from the declining population and geographical location next to Russia. Still, the country's business-favoring policies and modernizing economy make the country's future look bright. Thank you for watching.